Chapter 5. Success begets success. The benefits attending such worship were quickly seen, and hence numbers from outside the village, that is, from the immediate neighborhood, were drawn to the worship. This spread gradually from place to place, and people from even remote parts were attracted to the worship. As for the details of worship, it is not necessary to mention how Baba objected to sandal paste being applied to his forehead, though no objection was raised to its application to his feet, by anyone except Malspati, and how ultimately he acquiesced in every one applying sandal paste to his forehead also. Individual worship itself was first not systematic nor organized, but K.G. Bhishma, a good kirtankar and a great adherent of Vital worship at Pandharpur, drew up the ritual for Sai Baba worship on practical lines as the Pandharpur worship, and he brought a set of ritualistic verses for use by individuals at Shirdi, and these were sent up by Baba to Nana Sahib Chedokor at Jamner and were approved of by him. They were largely in use and tended to develop the worship of Baba on the customary lines of worship in well-known temples. The next step was from individual worship to congregational worship. It was in 1908 that the change was started. Congregational worship implied that there would be someone to officiate as the pujari or priest, and that he would be available at the various periods of worship. That is, during the Vespers and noon Ayartis. For this purpose, Hari Vinayak Sath, a settlement officer who in 1905 was blessed by Baba with the promise of a son in case he married, and who got married in consequence, set up one Mekasham called Mega to Shirdi so that he might officiate as the pujari and carry on congregational worship. But that man was an extremely dull and rustic Brahmin, having hardly any learning either in Hindu sacred literature or in any other literature. He heard that Sai Baba was a Muslim, and he requested Mr. Sath not to send him up to worship a Mohammedan. He was a Shiva worshipper, a staunch Hindu, and might worship Datta, but not a Muslim. The Sath told him that Baba was God, and therefore he might worship him. So under pressure from Sath, the man arrived at Shirdi and was taken by Shema to Baba. Baba, reading his mentality completely, shouted against him at his first approach and said, "Why does that fool of a Sahib, this Sath, send this idiot to me?" So saying, he drove Mega away, because Mega would consider it demeaning to worship Baba. Mega, being a Shiva worshipper, was attracted to Triambak, a sacred place for Shiva, 18 miles away from Nasik, and tried to spend his time there. But there he fell ill and remembered his refusal to worship Baba. He thought that might be the reason why he had his illness. Having learned about Baba's greatness, he returned to Baba, this time more humble. By Baba's grace, he regained his health and started in early 1909 congregational worship. He was fully convinced that Baba was Shiva, the same as the Shiva at Triambak. He was determined to worship him with Ganges water, that is, the Godavari water and the bilva or bell leaves. So he usually went out 5 miles to fetch Godavari water for daily worship, and 3 or 4 miles to fetch bell leaves, which are said to be specially appropriate for Shiva worship. As 1 bell leaf is even sufficient offering to Shiva, when even the very orthodox Mega thus became an ardent devotee of Baba, others followed suit and sooner or later gave up their prejudices against Baba and joined in the congregational worship. All this required time, and obstacles like Mega's sentiments had to be overcome and made stepping stones for further progress. To make the congregational worship more advanced and attractive, there was an enthusiastic set gathering at Shirdi. One Ramakrishna Ayi, a young widow of the family name of Sasa Rubadadi, came and established herself as a devotee of Baba, and being highly accomplished, was intent upon using all her gifts and cleverness for developing Sai Baba's worship. She drew large numbers of people to herself and made them more enthusiastic in the cause of Sai worship. She made them carry out her plan of fitting out Baba and his Chavadi in exactly the same way as these would be fitted out if Baba was a real Maharaja and a real image of God. The Shodaska Upacharyas common to all Hindu worship and the Raja Upacharyas add pomp to worship in temples and muths. The Raja Upachara means treating the object of worship as a Maharaja. They add to the impressiveness of the ceremony and the religious effect on the minds of those who attend that worship. They also increase the extent of worshippers. Thus, Ramakrishna Ayi got introduced silver whisk and silver maces and silver umbrellas, candelabras and moons, and artificial gardens to deck the Chavadi, where Baba was worshipped on alternate nights. A car, a palanquin with silver appurtenances, a horse, and other regal paraphernalia were furnished on her insistence and the insistence of other devotees to make Baba worship run exactly like a Vital worship or the worship of great acharyas in their muths. This by itself would be impressive, but Baba fell into the humor of the devotees. They wanted to make him and call him always a Maharaja, and he was determined that he should be a Maharaja to satisfy the devotees. What are especially wanted in a Maharaja's durbar were valuable presents in cash and kind to various people visiting the durbar in the hope of obtaining those presents. Pandits, acrobats, nautch girls, wrestlers, and musicians and such, who flocked to regal durbars, visited Shirdi Sai's Maharaja durbar also. Sai Baba therefore arranged for funds to pay for them. Moreover, there were those depending upon his favor to get wealth, which, on the principle of Rinanubandha, he wished to shower upon them, such as the Tatya Patel and the Lakshmi Bai. So Baba's durbar had need to get an income, and Baba began from 1908 to ask for dakshinas. Formerly, he would refuse offer of rupees to him, saying that he had no need for them. But from the time that this new tide began, he began to ask his visitors for payments of large sums. Some he would ask for 5 rupees, others 25, and some 250 rupees. Almost every one of them he asked would pay. Baba knew the limits and state of the purse of all the persons and could get exactly what he wanted, and he would not ask for any funds except where he was going to recompense, or where the visitor had already been blessed by God, Datta or Vital, and was bound to pay, or those whom God pointed out. Many sent vowed sums of their own accord. One paid 6,000 rupees. Therefore, Baba easily succeeded in getting as dakshinas the course of each day varying sums that totaled up in the evening sometimes to 300 rupees and sometimes to thousands of rupees. The total income came up to a provincial governor's income, on which the authorities tried to levy income tax. But Baba himself retained nothing at all, as every evening he would dispose of the day's accumulations. But the income tax authorities were able to levy tax upon the regular recipients of Baba's daily doles, such as Bade Baba and Tatya Patil. Thus Baba had a steady and large income from which he was making very liberal presents to Ramadasis, other dasis and acrobats and pandits, and various people who came to him from distant places such as Madras and Punjab, like Abdullah Jan, who hoped Baba would provide funds for Hajj. In addition to the large crowds of persons who offered eatables to Baba, it was possible for 200 beggars to be fed every day by Baba's bounty and doles. Thus, the appearance of a very prosperous durbar was presented at Shirdi from 1909 to 1918. All this pomp Baba despised. Profusion of wealth also could never captivate him, but he could use it without being tainted. It served a purpose, namely the widening of Baba worship, which had a great purpose behind it. That is why Baba allowed all this to develop. As Baba's having wealth and a royal durbar was misunderstood by some, we are obliged to stress again the following facts that prove that Baba was a Janaka Maharaja and continued to be a divine Samartha Sadguru, carrying on the noble work referred to already. Baba had no attachment and so could handle wealth and make it run into and out of his hands without danger of being tainted. He was a perfectly realized soul in the perfect Laya stage, as disclosed by his words, Mem aluham eham brahmasmi. For such a person, Srimad Bhagavata says, danger of attachment does not arise. Baba told the sadhu Devadas that fakirs and hermits must avoid the upadhis, namely delusion and pomp. But in Baba's case, at the latter end of his life, pomp was thrust upon him and had a useful purpose to serve. Till then, Baba avoided pomp. He would not even sit on a chair or lie on a cot, but sat and slept upon a sackcloth or gunny mattress placed on the floor. He would not put on his head the crown, the regal dress, when the devotees wanted him to look like a Maharaja had brought them for him, nor would he accept or allow other royal insignia upon his person. When a silver-plated palanquin was brought to him with its small silver horses as adornments, he refused to receive it and said that he did not want to sit in it. The devotees then said that he need not sit in it, but that his picture would be placed in it and that it will be used for the procession. Even then, he would not allow the palanquin into the Dwarakamayi, and so they had to leave the palanquin in the open yard in front of his mosque. At night, some of the silver horses were stolen. The devotees, noting it, were very sad and came to complain of it to Baba. But Baba asked them, I say, why was not the whole palanquin stolen? That is, to Baba, it was a matter of utter indifference whether palanquins or silver articles or any other things were provided or not provided, were stolen or remained safe. He lived as a true sannyasi, up to the end of his life on bhiksha food. Of course, it is well known that when people go out for begging bread, all sorts of things, insipid or even partly rotten, are given as bhiksha, especially to beggars. In the case of Baba, who enjoyed more respect than most beggars, rotten things would not be showered on him, but many people who were content to eat rather ill-cooked and tasteless or insipid food would bestow part of their stuff upon Baba also. What we eat, we give to God. That is why the hermit is directed in Uddhava Gita, namely Srimad Bhagavata, to, as it states, the sage should observe the Madhukakari system in begging for food. He must take little doles from several houses without taxing them too much. He must take only what is absolutely needed to keep body and soul together. Baba did not hate or fear poverty, but on the other hand, he was content with it and esteemed it. He said, Fakur aval Padshah. That is, the Fakur is the real emperor, because he can lead a life free from care and anxiety. So Baba had no possessions, and all these regal paraphernalia mentioned were kept with Ayi, and on her death were held by an association, and finally vested in the Sai Sansan, formed by the order of the district court in 1922. When Baba left the body, he had only 16 rupees in his hand and no other property. Hence the Raja Upacharyas, which would have puffed up or affected other persons, did not affect him. In refusing to own property or to have a palace, he set an example, an excellent one. If all sadhus had followed his example, there would not be so much of scandal against sadhus and so much of wreck in sadhus' lives that we notice. Baba followed the direction of the Shastras for hermits and fakurs, that a hermit should not put by anything for the morrow. As it says in the Bhagavata, the sage should not store what he obtains by begging for the evening or keep it for the next day. His vessels for receiving alms must be either the hand or the stomach. You should not hoard things like the bee. If he does, like the bee, he will be killed. Spiritually, persons who store and develop attachment or moha, which means death of the soul. Baba had also no necessity for delicacies. He had thoroughly conquered his palate. As it says in the Srimad Bhagavata, when the palate is conquered, everything is controlled. Baba was a perfect Jitendriya. His driti, or self-control, included conquest of the urges of hunger and sex. Druti means perfect control over the palate and the sex urge.